You're hanging out after hours with Matt Anderson, presented by Inside the Gamecocks.
Well, welcome in, everybody. Big news in sports world today. I know everybody right now is tuning in to talk about Dan Hurley turning down the Los Angeles Lakers head coaching job to stay at UConn. We also had big news. A new softball coach at University of South Carolina has been named. But no, the big news of the day is that South Carolina is set to hire a new baseball coach, a familiar name, Paul Mainieri from LSU. He coached there for 15, 16 years, 4 SEC championships, 6 SEC tournament championships, and 1 national title, and I'm sure a slew of trips to Omaha, because that's just what happens at LSU. Happy to have Alex Jones here, and also JC Shurburtt popping in with a great new hairdo. I love it, JC.
Yeah, it was looking a lot more fly this morning, but it's been kind of windswept and blown. I guess I was blown away by the name. Whittle and I were sitting there talking this morning, and I was trying to play devil's advocate and figure out who this mystery candidate was, because we figured out Sunday there is indeed a mystery candidate that nobody's talking about. And so, and of course you expect, they're still coaching. So you start going through everybody's coaching staff, and what about this possibility? I'll give you an example. I guess Paul Hughes from Kansas State, you look back through his resume, he was at Virginia Tech when Shane Beamer was an assistant there. So you're like, maybe Ray's talking to that guy. Pretty good enough coach, not Paul Mainieri, but a pretty good coach. Maybe you look at Wes Johnson at Georgia and you're like, this guy has had no hesitation in jumping from job to job to job, including leaving the Twins where they were doing well and coming back to college to coach. Left Mississippi State after a year to go to Arkansas. You're like, Georgia's not as good of a baseball job as South Carolina. I don't know why, but it didn't. Namely because they don't really invest in it like South Carolina does. But, he jumped. And you're like, so maybe it's Wes Johnson. Maybe Ray Tanner saw that team and it reminded him of some of his old teams, which Georgia quite frankly did. And was like, all right, well, we want Wes Johnson. That's like on and on and on. Maybe it's a smokescreen for a guy like Brian O'Connor, who you just don't want to say anything until it happens. Oh, no, none of that. So about 1:00 today, I'm sitting there reading an article on politics, and my phone says Paul. And of course, it's not an easy name to spell. So I got Mannerre.
It's not an easy name to pronounce either if you just look at the spelling.
I think it's Mainieri. I think that's how you
pronounce
it. Mainieri. It's Marineri Maraccio.
Marinara. Yeah.
No, but it's Mainieri. It's the Corleone. He's a Corleone and a Mainieri. But no, so that's him, 66 years old. He's a young 66. I went back and watched some videos of him. He's, like Lou Holtz got here when he was 62, and Lou was old. Okay. It was like old dude. Mainieri's a little bit different. Baseball, a lot of older dudes do well. It was pointed out to me that the manager of the Braves, Stickner, won his World Series when he's 67. Right. I mean,
and he's coaching 162 games a year. You got Dusty Baker out there doing the same thing.
I mean, baseball guys. Now, being a White Sox guy, you start to think about Tony La Russa and that thing that blew up in everybody's face. But heck, La Russa's way older. I mean, and I don't know. So, but this guy, I've followed his career since he was at Notre Dame. He won there. LSU, of course, had to part ways with the guy that replaced the guy in Smoke Laval. I mean, Smoke got him to Omaha, but Bertman set a big standard down there. Interesting note on that. I was going through looking at history of hires and things like that. And LSU guys did not go to they went to one NCAA tournament in 1975 before Skip Bertman got there in 84. Bertman was a lifelong Miami Hurricane from Miami, played at Miami, coached at Miami as an assistant before getting that LSU job. So it just kind of shows you, man, there's one of the goats of all of the sport that was just chilling in Miami, and LSU plucked him away, and you saw what he did. But they got Mainieri from Notre Dame. I think at that point they went out and hired the best coach they could. Immediately got them back up. They won in 2009. They played for it in 2017. He has 6 SEC tournament championships, 4 SEC championships. I didn't count the super regionals and regionals. Last year they slipped a little bit. They had a 13-17 conference record, still made it to the supers. Tennessee put them out, but and so then you start thinking about staff and this nice recruiting group that they got together, and with the portal and players leaving, and lo and behold, Monty Lee stayed as an assistant, and then Mooney, who is one of the better personnel and recruiter guys in the country, who just happens to be chilling at LSU right now. He's coming and joining Mainieri. And then there's a third assistant that, Whittle says don't. It's not something that you're going to shoot fireworks off over or anything, but it's coming as well. And Whittle also said, keep in mind that third coaching spot was a volunteer job about 2 or 3 years ago. So, expectations can't be huge, but this guy, he's one of the top 10 coaches in the game. Anybody that's won that many national championships or played for 1-1 and then 1,500 wins, won at Notre Dame, won at the United States Air Force Academy. That can't be an easy job. And then won at a place called St. Thomas down in Florida. So he's a winner, and I think that's what people wanted. People wanted Ray Tanner to hire someone like this time. This is the type of hire that in sports around here, Gamecock fans definitely rally behind, and throughout the history of all programs, it's usually worked out and provided for some great moments. Not always championship moments like we've had in baseball, but the Frank McGuire, the Steve Spurrier hire, the Lou Holtz hire, those were all that made fans believe, and I think this will allow fans to believe again.
I think so too, and that's exactly what I texted you, JC. I said, "Oh, there's your Spurrier Holtz hire. That just happened, and that's what we've been looking for." But Alex, want to get your thoughts here before we get John in to tell us everything we don't know.
Right. I think JC really kind of nailed it on the head right there. This is a guy who, if you're a South Carolina fan, is going to be pretty easy to get behind just because of the track record he has with pretty much winning at everywhere he's gone. And then the staff he's putting together so far as, Whittle's reported that Rooney and then Monty Lee stay. The big thing with Monty Lee in this coaching search was kind of the big support he had was having all the players kind of backing him and the recruits. So now if he's staying on staff, I think you can expect most of them at least to kind of hang around and still come because they're still behind Monty Lee. But then you add on to that you got, Hall of Fame level coach coming in to be the head coach. So, I think it's a huge win for South Carolina.
Yeah, I don't disagree there at all. I think that when you look at if you can keep Monty Lee in any capacity, you keep Monty Lee. And JC, you can talk a little bit more to this before John comes on, but there's not a more respected college coach in South Carolina than Monty Lee. You'd agree with that, right, JC?
Oh yeah, and I think if you're Monty Lee, look, that Citadel job. Certainly, they went to the College World Series in 1990, and I know people that went to school there. Great respect for the Citadel, always pull for the Bulldogs, right? But you go to Citadel and you never get to a regional, and Mainieri takes it to new heights, or not new heights, but takes it back to championship glory, and you're not here. What are your chances of running back to South Carolina after just being at Citadel for a few, probably slim. I think by staying at South Carolina, if this is his dream to be the head coach here, and I hope he is the head coach here one day, and I'll tell everybody till I'm blue in the face. Had we been sitting there talking about Monty Lee, I would be talking about it was a great hire, and I think Carolina's on its way back up. That's how strongly I feel about it. But if that's your idea, if you want the job, the head job one day, it's probably not a bad idea to get some more distance between the Clemson situation and then to be right here, where people get to know you again and love you again, and you're part of winning, instead of being part of kind of a coach's staff that was on the hot seat. So I think it's good for Monty Lee. Now, I'm sure he's disappointed he didn't get it. And anybody's dream, when you fall short of that, it's disappointing as a human being, as a man, as a coach, whatever. However, I think him staying is invaluable to South Carolina and also does provide, I think, some value to Coach Lee as far as if one day that's what he wants to be as a head coach at South Carolina. I think that's I think he positions himself well to do that. But yeah, Matt, just to clarify, Matt Williams is gone. The other guy that came in for I don't remember his name from Campbell's
Joey
gone.
Holcomb. Joey Holcomb.
Yeah. Ray fired Mike Current right when he fired Kingston. So I don't know Mike Current did all that well here. And so he's gone. Monty's staying. There'll be another assistant, and then Mooney's coming in from LSU. So that's the latest we have on the staff. And I don't know that Whittle's got maybe Whittle's got more. And Jay Diz makes a point. He's like, it's like coaching for Saban or something. Yeah, the Saban rehab or whatever. Paul Mainieri is one of the best, to ever do it. And yeah, I'm not saying he needs that rehab because I don't believe that. I don't, but sometimes it's not rehabbing your abilities as a coach. It's rehabbing the perception, which matters out there. And so stay or leave. I wish Monty Lee the best, and certainly glad that it's leaning like he's going to stay.
Yeah, and continuing to learn for Monty Lee's stance, just like having a guy to continue learning, being a head coach and all that, having a guy like Paul Mainieri to learn from is pretty good for his stance.
Yeah, I think so. And he's different than Coach Tanner, and that's really, both are very successful coaches, but they're different. We ever watch their teams play each other? They're different. It's a different. I can't really. I don't know enough about baseball to get into why and the specifics right now, but they're different guys, and so it's always good to do that. I'm not saying that Monty needed that to get this job. No. I want to be clear, but I think you're right. I think we all have resumes we try to build. Monty Lee's 47 years old. He's my age, so he's got a long runway, man, and he's done such good work as the interim. And then you bring in a Hall of Famer as the head coach, and he's still here with those relationships. And, there's going to be a lot of positives off the field for Gamecock baseball this offseason. Thanks for the compliment on the hair, Gamecock retweeter.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is, everyone wanted Ray Tanner to step out of the AD office and just coach a baseball team again. And look, there are only a handful of Ray Tanners out there. But if you wanted Ray Tanner to leave the AD's office and come coach baseball, you kind of just got a similar coach in that regard. Similar age, not 2 national championships, only 1, but the ability to just be a baseball guy. And, you talk about those older coaches in Major League Baseball, JC, and I agree with you in the fact that they've seen a lot of ball. And you look when Paul Mainieri left LSU, 2021, health reasons. I believe he was having some migraines, that type of thing. 2021 was a hard time to be in any coaching industry. Like, you had COVID, you had all these different things. It's like, what are we really doing? NIL was coming up. But the one thing I have heard is that Rooney knows how to embrace NIL. Monty Lee definitely knows how to embrace NIL and knows how to recruit in this day and age. But without any further ado, want to get Whittle in here. So we got John Whittle. John, has your phone cooled off a little bit?
No, it hasn't, but that's okay. That's fine. That's fine. There are a lot of text messages out there that I still have to respond to. So be patient, please.
I just appreciate you responding to me at 7:30 when I was like, hey, we do this at 9? I was like, we have – like, for those of you who don't realize it, and I know we're on Gamecocks, this is like the Duke coaching job opening, and then at 5:35 p.m., a new coach is named, and everyone wants to talk to Whittle because Whittle is Gamecock baseball coverage. And to get Whittle on here at 9 o'clock at night, we appreciate it, John. We appreciate it.
Absolutely. Glad to be here with you guys for sure.
So, Whittle, tell us about how 6 months ago you knew that Paul Mainieri was going to be the next coach at South Carolina, and you read the tea leaves, and it all worked out, right?
Yeah. There are a few folks on the message board who were like trying to pat me on the back for the coverage and don't, because, I didn't find out until a couple hours before it was, first published by Teddy Cahill of Baseball America that, that name was even floating around out there. Like I said this morning on the show with JC and JB and those guys, like There was a guy out there. I knew there was a guy out there. I was told there was a guy out there. I just wasn't told who the guy was, and I couldn't come up with it. And Paul Mainieri never really crossed my mind. So, it was it came as a surprise to me. I'd heard his name from a couple of folks, couple little whispers, maybe an hour and a half before Teddy Cahill put it out, but certainly not from anyone good enough for me to put my name on it and report it. And but yeah, it was completely out of left field. Or as I told somebody earlier, it wasn't from out of left field; it was out of the Congaree River.
Just what was your kind of first reaction when you heard that name kind of pop up?
Well, that's the national championship winning coach was the first thing I thought. I mean, that was the first thing that came to mind. And the second thing that came to mind was his reaction when that pitcher was sitting beside him in the SEC tournament press conference, sat there and told everybody that he had never hit in high school. And Mainieri's reaction was, you told me you were a great hitter in high school. Like, that was the next thing that popped into my head. And then the third thing was probably, he is kind of old. And then the fourth thing was, I mean, that's pretty dang good to get a national championship winning head coach to come to South Carolina, and be able to keep Monty, because I was able to figure out both of those things at pretty close to the same time. So to be able to get that done, I think is certainly a big deal.
Yeah, I think Monty Lee is huge. Yeah. That's huge part of it. That's like getting two gifts at once, I think. To me, like if I'm opening presents and I got what I wanted, but then I got another present under the tree, and it's just as awesome.
It's the Red Ryder BB gun.
Yeah, I can vouch for Whittle. He did not know. I tried to be like my normal brainstorming self this morning on the phone with him. He just told me to shut up. He's like, quit talking. It's nobody I don't know.
Well, were you? Did you have Mainieri on your list of folks to talk about this morning? Because that was not a name that I had.
I'd forgotten about the guy, to be honest. I just, because he seems kind of happy and retirement at LSU now. John, it seems like, based on what I read, and I just kind of looked on the internet and read some stuff about him, that he did recruit. And guys, keep in mind, baseball recruiting is done further in advance than basketball and football. But it seems like he recruited some of those guys that won the national championship with Jay Johnson last year.
Yeah. I mean, yes, that's true. Or he was a head coach. I think he is pretty active in terms of recruiting, more active than some. I don't think he is the most active guy when it comes to recruiting, but that's okay. That's where Terry Rooney is most impressive. Now, I haven't gotten the chance to dive into Terry Rooney too much, who's coming in as a pitching coach, but that guy recruits his tail off, and he works and works and works from a recruiting standpoint. So you have him with Monty Lee and how good he is as a recruiter. And regardless of who the other assistant coach is, or regardless of how much the head coach wants to be out there beating the bushes on players, you've got good assistants. You've got good recruiters. So I think South Carolina's in real good shape from a recruiting standpoint. And when I say I don't know how much, how deep into the weeds that Paul Mainieri goes from a recruiting standpoint, I truly mean I don't know. I don't know how deep he goes. Like, I know Monty is a head coach back from his time at Charleston and Clemson. He was out on the road a ton watching high school games, going to scout players, not like just going and sitting in the stands and rubbing elbows with fans to check on a commitment. Like, he was out there going to evaluate. And, Paul Mainieri might do the same thing. I don't know. Or he may just be kind of a guy who gets people on campus and closes the deal. We'll see. But from a recruiting standpoint, Rooney is great. Monty is great. And, that's a nice foundation right there from a recruiting standpoint.
So, John, how much does South Carolina in this day and age still recruit itself? Because there was a time when South Carolina was South Carolina, and now you have NIL, you have the transfers, you have all that kind of stuff. What's that like nowadays?
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't recruit itself. I mean, it's not Alabama football or Georgia football or anything like that. Like, now there are definitely advantages to South Carolina, but every school in the SEC has a passionate fan base when they're winning. Every school in the SEC now has a nice stadium. Like, every school in the SEC now has pitching labs and the all the data tracking things. Like, everybody in the SEC pretty much has the same stuff. South Carolina Stadium is nicer than most, and it's a little bit bigger than most. So, there are some advantages, but to say that South Carolina just recruits itself would be inaccurate. There are certainly big advantages that help South Carolina, couple of national championships included, but it's not something where you can just you have to go out and work. Still, you have to go out and work to get good players.
Yeah, and this is maybe kind of an obvious question, but going back to Mainieri, just how big is that to keep him on staff? Because when we're talking about him in the head coaching process, kind of the search, one of the big things was just how much how his players and recruits love him. Just how much can he help Paul Mainieri when he comes in from a recruiting standpoint in the state? And then obviously just what can his impact be going forward?
Yeah, I mean, Monty's a big key for the current players. Like we talked about on JC's show this morning, like, he's got great relationships with recruits, great relationships with current players, great relationships with past players that he's coached. Like, that kind of stuff is real and impactful. And nobody went into the portal before the head coach was named. And that's a credit to what they were hoping to get with Monty. So, he's able to hold some of this together. And I don't anticipate mass departures from a hitting standpoint. There might be a guy or two who want to go into the portal, but I don't know of any right now. I think with Monty being here and Mainieri being here, I think they'll still be fine. Now, from a pitching standpoint, with being a change there, I can see some pitchers going into the portal. I mean, we'll see how that goes, but I think part of the big deal with Monty is being able to be kind of a stabilizing voice there for the current team and for the future recruiting classes. And there's some good players in there. And at the end of the day, like, you've got to have good recruiting from the high school level that are coming in. You can't just be a portal baseball program. You have to have a good foundation of high school kids, and there is a good foundation of high school kids coming in. So I think that Monty is a big key in that.
Yeah, so John, right now NIL is the name of the game, and we talked about this last week when you were on this show. Yeah, you've seen numbers thrown around of you need to be at 1.5, 2 million, 3 million, whatever crazy numbers are out there right now for NIL. But does this type of hire help with NIL the same way that other hires could have for South Carolina baseball?
Yeah, I think so. I think so. And that's certainly something that's going to be measured here, in the coming weeks and month or two. I know that Monty had some people who were lined up if he were head coach, because that's people trusted in Monty and trust in Monty. So, whether they want to still support the same way with him being an assistant, we'll see. But I'm sure there's going to be plenty of people out there who want to support Paul Mainieri and the new direction of the program in general. So I think South Carolina is going to be in just a fine spot from an NIL standpoint. I don't know like how elite it's going to end up being, but I think South Carolina is going to be in a really good position from an NIL standpoint, when all is said and done with this.
Absolutely. So, John, can you talk about some of the other candidates that were a part of this search and, when people might have fallen off, or, there was always this mystery candidate, player X, player Y from the Big Spur days. But, you kind of put a great pros and cons article up on the Big Spur the other day and just trying to get your feel for where you thought this was going to go, how you would have recommended it went, those kinds of things.
Yeah. And, with the candidates, Ray wanted to go through his process, and he had a list of guys that he wanted to talk to, and I didn't know that there was a mystery guy out there until I guess it was yesterday morning, yesterday late morning, early afternoon, where I got word that there was somebody out there that's floating around. So I mean, I know I'm not. I'm smart enough to know that I'm not smart enough to know every candidate that Ray Tanner talks to and everything that's on his mind. I am smart enough to know that much. So I knew that there's always guys in every coaching search, whether it's football, baseball, basketball, that there are guys who are out there in Tanner's world that aren't in the online world with me or whoever else. So, but as time went along, like we knew that Ray was talking to people, and I knew that there were a couple of guys who didn't want to make a change to come to South Carolina, and I knew that there were a couple of guys that South Carolina didn't want as well after going through kind of the initial conversations that typically with Ray Tanner last a couple of hours. It's not a 10-minute, introduce yourself, say your age and location and those kind of things, and then get off the phone. Like, it's a deep, detailed conversation that Ray has to start these things. And he gets a pretty good sense in those, do I want to go this way, or do I keep him on the list, or I mark him off? What do I do? So, I was able to pick up some tidbits here and there along the way of guys that he liked and guys who maybe he didn't. And this is kind of where it ended up. But, on Saturday, and really Sunday, it was looking like Monty until, I found out about that on Sunday morning that, there was somebody else out there. And it felt like there was going to be somebody else out there because of the fact that, Ray could have hired Monty pretty easily a little bit earlier and not had to, miss out on some portal recruiting targets. Like, they had visits lined up and folks started canceling. And, there were 4 infielders that they had scheduled for visits, or 3 scheduled for visits. One who they were recruiting who said he was going to come on a visit, who all committed other places. 3 of them went to Georgia. One of them to Mississippi State. So they were in on the right guys, but, not having a head coach, prevented that from happening. So, there had to have been something floating around out there that we just weren't seeing. And, obviously that came to fruition this afternoon, but, there were some who came and went from a candidate standpoint. And then, it ended up being Monty or Paul Mainieri. And that was at the end of the day, who the hire was.
Yeah, and I think the interesting thing with any coaching search is it just drives so much buzz. It drives so much conversation, so many rumors. It's so hard to siphon through what is true and what is not true. I was in the same boat as you, John. I really thought it was going to be Monty, and I thought it was going to be Monty like last Thursday night. I heard Monty, but anyway, I'm so ecstatic that the Gamecocks still have Monty on staff because he's such a resource. But Alex, JC, any questions for Whittle? I know that he's a busy guy. We don't want to keep him all night, but let's fire some rapid fire stuff off.
Yeah, and I'll do my best to not talk for forever. I'll wrap.
No, John, you talk as much as you want. Everyone's here to see you, my friend.
What we folks that are on the bigspur.com obviously can read this. And you've written it before, but I don't know that we've touched on it on the air to our broader audience. What are the key positions in the portal? Do you think Coach Mainieri, Coach Lee, Coach Mooney, is it Mooney or Moody?
Rooney,
like the Rooney Rule. Rooney Rule.
Yeah.
There you go.
Coach Rooney. What are the positions you think they need to attack? Just
all of them.
Portal recruiting.
All of them. All of them. Hit all of them. No, you feel good about Blake Jackson and Ethan Petrie out there, right? Like those two, you got a couple of outfielders you feel good about. You lose your first baseman, you lose your second baseman, you bring back your shortstop and your third baseman who, neither one of them, and I think they would tell you this, I'm not 100% sure, but I think they would tell you this, probably didn't have the kind of year that they wanted and probably need to be better next year to keep a starting job. And then you lose your starting catcher. So, I mean, that's you've got to improve your play at every infield position and catcher. You need a center fielder. You just do. Like I think you're going to see one of those. I think you're going to see a catcher. I think you're going to see multiple infielders. There's an infielder in the class who I really like in KJ Scobie, who I think can come in and potentially play. You have Will Tippett and you have Lee Ellis, you have Talmadge LaCroix. Like, it's not out of the question that those guys really improve and play a lot better next year. So, but you got to get a guy in there for sure with a shortstop pedigree who you feel good about going in and playing that position. And you got to get a guy with a first base pedigree who you, in my opinion, who you feel really good about playing that position. I think Ethan Petrie is a right fielder. There will be people who argue with that point, but I think he's a right fielder. I think you need a stud in there at first base too. They were recruiting. They will recruit a couple of those, but at the end of the day, you probably need a couple of arms. But I think that number is probably going to grow. If South Carolina's pitching staff stays the same, nobody leaves from the recruiting class, nobody leaves from the current team, you're in a really good spot from a pitching standpoint. Maybe one, maybe two guys, depending on who you get. You start hitting a lot of you start having guys hitting the portal, then you're obviously going to need more. So we're looking at it'll be interesting to monitor that standpoint, the pitchers going into the portal thing, because that's gonna change things if a bunch of those guys end up going in.
Well, it's a tough blow because Matt Williams is such a great pitching coach, but also a South Carolina recruiting guy. Like, he knew to stay well. But go ahead, Alex.
Yeah, I was gonna say I'm gonna stick from a player standpoint. Who could you see kind of make some of these guys going off into summer leagues and stuff? Who could you see of a guy who can make like maybe the biggest jump in the summer leagues, who could make an impact next season?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question, and there's going to be a lot of eye rolling because I was very high on this guy coming into the season, and I'm not gonna give up on the guy yet. But I think Will Tippett can be a guy. His numbers were pretty good when he started hitting right-handed. When he started hitting right-handed, he hit 283. Had 6 home runs and 40-something at bats. He started playing better. So you keep him hitting right-handed the whole year. And, you see the typical improvement that you see from a sophomore to a junior. He's got position versatility. He can play shortstop from a defensive standpoint. I don't think he has a terrible arm, but I think his arm can come a little bit further as well. But he can play shortstop. He can play second base. He could even play center field if you don't find the right guy in center field. So he's a guy who I circle as somebody who can make a jump next year and be somebody who can be in that starting lineup. I mean, I think you look at Ryan Bakes, a catcher from the freshman class who kind of set the world on fire there in the fall and took a little step back in the spring perhaps and didn't get a whole lot of opportunities because of having Cole and Dalton in there doing their thing. But those are probably the two guys right now from a position player standpoint that I would feel best about saying either weren't very good or didn't have much of a role in 2024 that could in 2025.
Yeah, so we also have the Major League Baseball draft coming up, John. Any thoughts on that and where the Gamecocks stand with potentially keeping players, losing players? Does the new head coaching hour help with any of those things right now? I know that a lot of those conversations have already been had, but
yeah, I mean, pitching standpoint is kind of the same way with the draft as it is with recruits and current players. It's like, when you have a change in pitching coach, it might, if you get an opportunity to go play pro ball, might kind of push you in that direction versus potentially being pushed and coming back if you felt really good about what your role is and who you're working with and so forth. So pitching, we'll kind of take that one off the table a little bit. I mean, I do think Eli Jones is probably going to be a 6th or 7th rounder, and that would be good enough regardless of who the pitching coach was. So I think he's probably looking at it being able to do that. Cole Messina is going to get drafted high enough. I don't know on a lot of these other guys. Like there's a chance Matthew Becker gets drafted. There's a chance Kenny Jones gets drafted. Dylan Eskew. I know I'm missing a couple. Chris Veach has eligibility, but I think he will probably get drafted and be able to sign and go play pro ball. And he was back this year for an extra year, so I would think if he gets picked at all, he's probably going. Jerzenbeck is draft eligible. There's gonna be some decisions to make, especially from a pitching standpoint.
Yeah, I think that's the most interesting thing because you just look at this era of sports and, it almost is year to year in a lot of ways. And, sometimes it might be semester to semester as we get cracking on all of this transfer stuff. But, JC, I know you got a couple more things to throw out to the world. What's going on? I see you typing.
I was looking down at my honey-do list for tomorrow, actually. I have to get done.
Who's in charge of scrolling through the chat box and telling me what kind of questions are in there?
That's me.
Is that Alex job?
We got Alex Rojas. He says we need Jerzenbeck next year. He's a beast. I kind of like pitchers like Ty Good and Chad Blackwell from back in the day, where it looks kind of like an octopus or something out there. And it's all weird. Jerzenbeck, my stupid baseball analysis. Jerzenbeck's kind of got that like nastiness, I think he'd be hard to hit, but and Monty Lee on Inside the Gamecocks did announce with us that, and he clarified it by saying, "Look, the draft we don't know, but as of now, Jerzenbeck's coming back. What's the significance there? I do think he's got good stuff, and I think he was an underrated injury last year too, John, because he could have helped down the stretch.
Oh, he certainly could have helped. He'd have helped all year. I mean, he's probably the guy with the best stuff on the staff. All bets are off as far as Jerzenbeck returning next year. I know he was pretty tight with Matt Williams, so that's probably going to have an effect. We'll see. Maybe he hits it off with a new guy. We'll see what happens with Jerzenbeck. I wouldn't hold Monty to what he said last week. If Monty and Matt were both back, then I would feel really good about Jers being back. But we'll see what happens with that one. But yeah, but you're right. He's a great pitcher and has potential to be Friday night starter next year. If he comes back and shows full health.
So LSU had a kid, and there's a lot of personnel things. So I'll ask you we'll get quickly through it. There's a kid from LSU, Cam Johnson.
Yeah, and I've been asked about him, and I don't know with the with the current structure of the staff. The plan was not to go after him. Back when Monty and Matt were here, because of the fact that, as we said, the pitching staff was in a pretty good spot. He's gonna be a big NIL guy. So, I didn't see that happening, but we'll see if a bunch of folks leave. Obviously, there's got to be at least some type of relationship between Johnson and Rooney. So we'll see what comes to pass with that. I don't really know just yet.
Okay, they ask her about the JUCO guys. The top Gamecocks, again, top 3 of the top 10 JUCO arms heading to Columbia. Just talk about those guys a bit. Can they help?
Yeah, and those guys can get out of NLIs. I think Brandon's – I mean, all of those guys were scouted and committed to Matt Williams. So, pitchers are typically tied to their pitching coaches. So we'll see how some of those things play out. Brandon Stone was the number 1 guy. Jackson Susie was number 9 guy in those particular rankings of JUCO pitchers. They were both planning on coming to school, and both of those guys can be starters, weekend starters. Brandon Clark was in there either 5 or 6. He's probably a draft guy. We'll see. We'll see if he wants to stick with South Carolina too. Monty was actually a big part of that one as well. So maybe he wants to stick on board. So we'll see how it goes with him. But, those guys are, I mean, people think I'm a moron or an idiot for thinking that South Carolina's pitchers or pitching staff was in position to be really good next year. Like, I really feel like it is in position to be good next year. regardless of going after just one or two transfer portal guys. And that's the JUCO recruiting is a big part of that.
Somebody asked about the kid from Florida State that came in. That I guess was he a corner infielder or a short?
Yeah, he was a shortstop. He could potentially factor in. We'll see if he's back next year. He left Florida State last year with the hope of being drafted and starting a professional career, and that didn't happen. I imagine that he'll probably want to try to do that again, but I don't know that with certainty. So we'll see what he ends up wanting to do, but he was brought in from that standpoint for sure.
That's about
Whittle,
it.
Yeah, I was going to ask you. You got a pick for College World Series champion? Have you had a chance to watch any of the games?
Yeah, I've been watching them, and I'm trying to keep up with the Georgia and NC State game right now. NC State's up 6-4 in the top of the 8th. Actually, that ball might get out. Nope, caught at the wall. But it's just hard to bet against Tennessee. I know the number 1 seeds never won it, so I probably shouldn't pick them, but it's really hard to pick against those guys. Like, I think they're a little bit short from a pitching standpoint, but if you can keep playing in the winner's bracket, like, you can keep recycling your pitchers pretty easily without having to go too deep, as if you lose that game and have to start playing, every day when that pitching depth really becomes a bigger factor. Florida's as hot as anybody right now. It's hard to bet against them. Sometimes you just get a couple of superstars who can carry you, and Jack Caglione. He's like 2 superstars in one. Like, he can carry you here and here. So I don't know. I hadn't really about that question yet, but my initial the initial limb I'm going out on is pretty sturdy in saying Tennessee.
I'll see if you agree with this, but I would say Kentucky's style of play would work pretty well in Omaha. Do you agree with that?
It seems that way because you put pressure on teams when you play like that, and being in Omaha, there's a lot of pressure out there. So, I don't disagree with that point at all. It's hard for teams to necessarily go out there and it being everybody's first time, and not feeling a little bit overwhelmed, and we'll see how Kentucky reacts to it all, but their style of play puts a lot of pressure on folks out there, and that can certainly be a big key.
Curious to see how many members of Big Blue Nation head out there, because they travel in droves for hoops, and they do travel well in football too. First trip ever to Omaha for that Kentucky. By the way, all 16 teams have now been to the College World Series in the SEC. It's a bloodbath, folks. And also the Vols, because Vols fans are a lot like Carolina fans in the sense that if you start winning in something, they're going to start showing up. And there's about 3 times as many of them as there are of us Gamecocks. So I'm curious to see the amount of orange and blue. So, all right, John, man, you were the best. It was an honor and privilege to have you on tonight. I don't mean to speak for Matt, but I think these kind of things are really cool, and I think everybody out there wanted to hear what you had to say about all this.
Yeah. Shout out to Jonah Bride and the Jacksonville Jumbo Shrimp. I don't know how they did up in Charlotte this past week, but I was hoping to get up there and see Jonah play a time or two, but there was this coaching search stuff that, kept me tethered to my computer and phone each night. So, had to show out and support Jonah in some capacity. So I don't know how the Jumbo Shrimp did this past week, but I'll have to catch up with them here soon.
Hey, give us one more update from that NC State game.
8-4 now. NC State must have been a 2-run home run while we were chatting. So Wolfies are looking good in the top of the 8th. Georgia will still have a couple more at bats.
Yeah. All right.
Well, John, we appreciate it. Thank you so much. John was originally going to be on our program tomorrow night, but we bumped it up. So tomorrow night it'll be me and Alex. JC, I know you have a very busy Tuesday. So
where's Mad Dog at? He's in here. He's somewhere.
He's in here.
There he is. We should get his take on the
Evening.
hire too. Yeah, well, what's up, Phil?
Yeah, man. Yeah, went.
I meant to tell you guys to put him on the square because I advertised on the thing. I was like, Phil will be on.
No,
I don't know what he normally does on this show. I was just
I'll pop in
wildly promoting
every
it.
once in a while. Yeah, I'll pop in every once in a while. I don't know. You
Everyone's
went.
like, Mad Doggy.
Yeah, it turned out into some big game hunting there at the end.
After all that talk about,
I know.
all of it,
and
this
it
is
all
not how
came
normal
back
coaching
to some
searches
big
go.
big game hunting. I'm just glad it didn't get weird and go another week and a half, 10 days. Like, could you imagine the speculation? God, I was thinking about that. I'm like, what if something's going on with some of these guys that are about to play in Omaha and this thing gets drug out? Oh man, that would be awful. But fortunately, we avoided all that. With this. I'm of a like mind. I think if you can maintain Monty Lee on staff, that will be invaluable. And I think that if you put Lee and Rooney together on the recruiting trail, any of that, I guess criticism, at least from what I've seen on the reactions about Mainieri not being an avid recruiter or, that active in it, well, you can counteract that. So that makes me feel good. It's all about the staff and hey, listen, anything that gets us some wins on the field is what we need, and a good fresh clean start here was called for.
Yeah, I think so. And I mean, Paul Mainieri, I go back to this thing about baseball, and I'm no baseball expert. And yes, Jared, it is a caged animal hire by definition. Caged animal hire, for those that don't know, it's when a great program finally says, we're going to go hire somebody that's won a damn thing or two that we know can win because we're tired of losing.
That's right.
And we're going to do what it takes to get that done. I guess I didn't really think about the retired route. And as Gamecocks,
right,
we all should have, because Frank McGuire, Lou Holtz, Steve Spurrier. I mean, this is the classic South Carolina style hire. It's like, this guy's won national championships. Else, bring him in. We need him. It's interesting because it's never happened that way with the baseball program. So it's going to be very interesting to see what kind of gasoline this puts on the fire. Yeah. But it is a caged animal hire. Somebody wants to bring back Kingston as the third assistant. I don't know. So
definitely recruiting coordinator Kingston.
Yeah,
only if they still had that volunteer spot.
Hey, and I'll say this: if this works out, Ray Tanner won't hire baseball coaches. Right? He was 0 for 2. But in baseball, if you go 1 for 3, you're batting 333.
You're in the Hall.
You're in the Hall of Fame, baby. So I think that's. I mean, if you get out of all this with the athletic director that people love to hate on, that had to replace Steve Spurrier, had the gonads to fire the only men's basketball coach to ever take South Carolina to the Final Four, and also the only head coach in the history of the athletics. Or the coach in the history of athletics that achieved the most significant team accomplishment in a revenue sport. You have the guts to fire him after a winning record. You hired a guy that had been fired at Florida for football. That took some kahunas. But that was the guy that followed your legend, and that person normally does not work out. If you get out of there, Shane Beamer turns football around. Lamont Paris continues to win, and this guy hangs another banner. Get another thing of another championship of the trophy case. How different is Ray Tanner's legacy going to look?
Right.
That is an entire 3-hour Inside the Gamecocks show at some point, because we could talk all night long about that. I'm game to do it. No, I think it's crazy though. Like, if you just think about it, Dawn Staley, didn't hire her, but given her every resource available to be incredibly successful. He's doing the same thing with Lamont, and people forget that Ray Tanner came in he obviously came in 2013, but he's had a lot of stuff that he had to deal with. Not only COVID and the weirdest time in athletics history, transfer portal, NIL, all of those types of things. And I don't think there's many people that wouldn't have hired a lot of the coaches that Ray has hired. Maybe Will Muschamp, but go ahead and say it on this show. I was for that hire when it was made. I thought it was a great hire, hiring Will Muschamp back in the day. But Ray every AD gets they get a lot of the scrutiny and they get a lot of the praise when it all works out.
That's crazy. They're basically. I think I think it does take, the AD has to come up with his own list, right? So I think to think about this is pretty interesting. And I think, I'll say this, man, unlike Paul Mainieri is not Steve Spurrier or Lou Holtz. Like, Lou Holtz took this job, and I'll go back to Frank McGuire. Keep in mind, all three of these people were unemployed, or McGuire may have been coaching the Philadelphia Warriors at the time. Spurrier and McGuire, they had reasons to go back and compete against the teams that they used to coach. Because McGuire, no love lost with him in the ACC. Spurrier going back, coaching against Florida, who hired Urban Meyer. Let me at it. Lou was his last, but where Lou filled out his famous list of things. I'm going to go to Johnny Carson's show one day. And that happened in Columbia. So it was kind of special to him, and he knew Mike McGee. And, so all these guys, had kind of their reasons. This guy, I think it's just straight up, South Carolina is a great baseball program, and I can go win another national championship there. There's no other, oh, well, my mom's in South Carolina, or, oh, man, I made my list there, or, I want to compete against this team or that team. He has no, bitter feelings towards LSU at all. In fact, he's been around that program supporting Coach Johnson and stuff. I think he was just like, I didn't get back in for Miami and didn't get back in for who else he turned down? Oh, I didn't want to go back to Notre Dame. I don't blame him. It's freezing. But South Carolina is a different level, and I need to go take that opportunity.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure he saw some of their players that return on this roster and kind of said, look, they've got what it takes. And I think kind of when we talk about Monty Lee, that's where the crucialness of him being, or potentially being, staying on staff because of the relationships with those guys. So, he saw those guys and say, look, I've got a chance to go do big things here with this roster, and we can do it pretty quick. That's just my opinion.
Well, I think you have a great opinion, and the fact that when a 66-year-old comes out of retirement to go coach, he's not trying to go to a regional. He's trying to win a national championship and create a legacy at two different programs, which is what a lot of coaches try and do.
I look great. I mean, and maybe he's because baseball is a different animal than basketball and football around here. Baseball, it is a place that expects national championships and all that. And so you mix those high expectations. I mean, to me, it's not just a place to kind of go kick your feet up and hope to get to the Outback Bowl, and let's face it, Spurrier had some very good years, best run in program history. Don't get me wrong. It's good accomplishments, but it wasn't like they were in the SEC championship game every year. I mean, it kind of, emerged a different way. So, baseball's different. Baseball's just all about that consistency Tanner set during his tenure and somehow trying to live up to it. And this guy's lived up to it at other places for a long time.
Yeah. And giving him an opportunity. I really like the whole point that, this guy doesn't come in here at his age to think it's a full rebuild and we're going to eventually get there. This is a win now mentality, is what this looks like, at least from his end. I mean, we'll know more once he addresses us, everybody after officially, signing and all that, and the big pomp and circumstance press conference. It'll be interesting to hear what he has to say. Not that winning the press conference means anything, but I'm intrigued to see what his approach is.
Oh, Phil, my favorite thing in the world is introductory press conferences.
Oh, they're awesome.
I
don't miss them. Yeah, no, I don't miss it. But
I will watch any introductory press conference just for the questions afterwards. I think that's the best part because there's always a question that's like, you really thought that was a good one? Like, that's what you went with your one question in a press conference.
Yep. And some of them, they really take full advantage of that opportunity to
SEC media days. I was going to stand up there and coach the tape, and I was just a little boy when he came out of Alabama. My grandma stood out there, gave me a big kiss on the lips, and all that. But I just wanted to know what dude. It's like Bama Shorts rag.com blog, and then you get on there in September. They've already played a couple of games, and they hadn't written anything since media days. It's just god awful. But anyway, so that's the deal. But yeah, I can't wait to hear what this guy says, Mainieri. I think it's always kind of neat when you have coaches that are very, very successful in other programs talk good about your program, and so it'll be some positive endorphins causing material tomorrow.
Yeah, for sure.
So Alex, how about before we get out of here, I want you to let everybody know how many welcome homes are we sitting on right now for the Gamecocks?
So all these days are running together now. So since Saturday, they've had 5. And then we had 4 at the beginning of the day who were unannounced. Then we had 3 with the defensive end from Georgia announcing his commitment. So now we're sitting on 3 unannounced welcome homes, but we'll see how long it takes for some of those guys to announce. Pretty successful weekend, though, for those guys.
Yeah, and I'll tell you one guy specific that committed over the weekend. I haven't found much better tape at his position through my whole career. This guy's a BM, but he's a bad person, and he loves football. But and then the kid they got tonight, what's his last name, Alex? Kai Sung
Aki Pra.
Pra.
Yeah, Pra. It starts with a P. Yeah.
Pra. So Pra, like I was told, heck of a developmental prospect. Like huge upside. They think they got a steal there. So that's I think Dylan won them, but a little thicker. But yeah, those are good gets this weekend, and some more definitely will be coming down the pike soon.
Well, we'll hit on all of those tomorrow night, Alex, 9 p.m.
Yep.
We will. Tomorrow, I'm going to shut up. It's all going to be Alex because he knows all this stuff better than I do.
He's been killing it
tomorrow.
Yeah, man. Mm-hmm.
But look, we had to get an episode out tonight. We had to get a show going tonight because this is one of the best recent days in South Carolina baseball that we've seen in a long, long while. And the excitement level for the program should be, through the roof. Don't get bogged down at age 66. Get excited about the coaching staff and the history that he has winning, and then the assistant coaches that are going to recruit their tails off. And I think everyone's ready for South Carolina baseball to be South Carolina baseball again. So stay tuned stay locked into the Big Spur. This stuff doesn't stop. I think JC was put out an article today at like 5 a.m. I don't know how he wakes up that early and just fires things off. Alex does about 24 articles a day. I don't know when he sleeps. I know JC sleeps for at least 3 hours tonight. Not sure about Alex. And then obviously Phil producing all these amazing shows on the Chief Sports Network and Inside the Gamecocks, Late Night Gamecock Show, JC and Morgan, Chin Music, all of them. Everything that he does is ridiculous. I don't know when Phil sleeps either, but I'm going to go to sleep because I might be the Late Night Gamecock. At the same time, I have a 15-year-old.
You got
now.
that. Yeah.
Well, that's why you're the Late Night Gamecock. You have a 15-year-old. You're up anyway, dude. It's like,
yeah, that's right.
I don't know. I thought Late Night Gamecock. I was like, we have the intro at the beginning. It's like, hi, this is Matt Anderson. Welcome into the Late Night Gamecock Show.
Yeah, that's right.
Tonight we've got a very special announcement to make. Paul Mainieri has been named the head coach at the University of South Carolina Baseball. Now these messages. What if we did all our sponsors, like
that'd be
NPR?
Great. Give it the Delilah touch.
The Delilah touch.
Yeah.
Chicken cock whiskey. Goes down smooth. Delicious. These wings. Mike, we could put Mike Morgan's name in AI or voice in AI and make it feminine.
Oh, yes.
Man,
that sounds like a great project for that D spot.
These wings.
You're going to have to get Mike's agent to sign off on that. I don't think he would appreciate that name, image, and likeness.
the feminine Morgan voice. But no, so anyway, I'm anyway. Much love to all you guys.
Yeah, man.
Well,
Uh,
guys, as always, guys and gals, we appreciate you for joining us tonight so much. If you found us on YouTube tonight, amazing. If you find us in podcast form tomorrow, you all give us the most valuable thing you have, which is your time. And you have nothing more valuable to give us. And we appreciate you spending a little bit of that time with us. You can reach out to all of us, JC, Phil, Alex, myself, we're all on Twitter. We'll get those Twitter handles out there, and you can find us on the Big Spur. And until tomorrow night, we'll talk to you soon. And Alex and I'll be back tomorrow. I hope you guys all have a great evening, and thanks again for listening.
thanks, guys.